The more we can help women remember who they are and remember their power, the faster we can shift the trajectory of this planet. We need feminine energy. We need strong women who are connected to their heads and their hearts from their body, mind, and spirit. Welcome to Inner Alchemy. I'm your host, Ashley Logan, and I am so happy that you're here. Inner Alchemy is for the dreamers, the doers, the believers, the people who are holding on to hope that maybe there's a better path forward. I serve high-performing women who are ready to claim their own authority in the world, who are ready to rewrite the narrative about what's possible for them as it relates to purpose, parenting, connection, and so much more. I believe that with a regulated nervous system, we can do so much. And I believe that women have been sold a narrative that's just not fucking true. And that by connecting with what's true for ourselves, that we have the capacity to change the world. And this is what the show is all about. A few things for those who are new here. One, Inner Alchemy used to be called Unapologetically Yours. So for all of the people who came over from Unapologetically Yours, thank you. Thank you for being here. I just wanted to remind you to subscribe, like, comment, share, all of those things that help make sure that we stay connected, because every week things are going to get more real. Now, I don't want to say more intense. I'm hoping to create something where you can really see yourself in the words I'm saying and the guests who come on the show, because I believe that women really need a mirror. At least I did. And for so much of my journey, I didn't have someone to show me the way or show me what was possible. And through a process of deep remembering, making a fuckload of mistakes, I was able to come back home to myself and to my body and sort of reclaim what was true for me. And that's what I'm hoping to do for other people. My audience is primarily women because that's my lived experience. But if you're tuning in and you can relate to what I'm sharing, please know you are welcome here, and I want to hear from you. But I also want to tell you guys a little bit about me for those of you who don't know me from Eve. So I am a mother of three, first and foremost. I knew from the time I was a little girl that I was meant to be a mother. And so I was blessed with three beautiful kids, a daughter and two little boys. And as someone who identifies as a feminist, which my definition is just wanting equal opportunities for all genders, it's really important to me that I raise my children to have a fair and balanced perspective and to be connected with the divine masculine and the divine feminine within each of them, so that my daughter has access to her rage, so my sons have access to their compassion and their empathy. And that in itself has been a journey. I also am an entrepreneur. So last year, I exited my marketing agency that was called Yakety Yak. And I founded that 12 years ago. I built it from the ground up and am uniquely equipped to talk about the challenges of being a driven woman in business. And what was so interesting about that journey was, everything. But I was taught to be an entrepreneur by men. And so I made a ton of mistakes in business. I made a lot of mistakes in team building, and all of them I have paid for, learned from, and had a reckoning with. And through the process of being an entrepreneur and a mother at the same time, which is just one of those things that is statistically building what I built while being a mother was kind of possible, but really, really rare to have the success I did. I built a 7-figure marketing agency. I had over 30 employees, and we served clients on a global basis. The cost of that to me was just feeling tremendously disconnected from myself, disconnected from my body, and burnt out. So why don't we start there in terms of the story? I have always been someone who was a creative person and also a high achiever. So part of that came from being raised by an entrepreneur dad who was, always encouraging me to think outside the box and to work really, really hard and to never give up. and I didn't. But I was a creative person. So I was an art minor at University of Tennessee and a creative writing major. People are like, what the fuck are you going to do with an English major? And I laughed because, I mean, ultimately, look at our world today. Everything is about communication. Everything is about writing and being able to tell a story. And so it suited me really, really well for the future. But I ended up more in the business world and particularly in sales, and where my job was to help build relationships with people. And I've always been deeply empathetic and someone who I just love people. I want to connect with them. I want to know their stories. I believe that every single person is worthy of love, which sounds like totally hippy dippy, but I believe it's true. I was raised Christian, and I think that is the most important part of Christ consciousness is that we are all worthy of divine love, that we all were made in the image of God, and that we must love our fucking neighbor. So I've got lots of thoughts that you'll hear throughout the show about organized religion and my evolution there. But ultimately, love is at the core of who I am. And I love people and always had this ability to make people feel seen, heard, and understood, which was why I really excelled in sales and in the business world. But in all of the roles that I had before I started my agency, I was a creative in a deeply suited world. So tended to be the only female and had lots of experiences navigating sexual harassment, navigating different challenges in the workplace that I applied to, my lived experience today and how I built my agency and the choices that I make today, and also the healing that I had to do as a result of some of those experiences. So when I did found my agency, it was because I was needed to get my creative out. I was so tired of sort of walking around with this like cloud over my head of being in this position. At the time I started my agency, I was working in commercial real estate as a tenant rep office broker, which meant that I was 100% commission. I was probably about one of 10 other women in the entire Chicagoland area who were tenant rep office brokers. And it was interesting because I faced a fair amount of challenges from that experience. One, from doing business in like cowboy land. This was an unregulated environment where a high volume commission, where people were out all the time partying, and a lot of those were young people. So this was like tons of sexual energy. And I felt like I was always looking over my shoulder. I felt like I was always having to play this part of like balancing like cool girl and like being on my toes and not letting my guard down. And anytime I would, like, it was just like bad things kept happening, but the money was good. And so ultimately, what I did was I saved up enough money to put myself back through grad school. And I did. And I left and I went and I got a master's in journalism from Medill at Northwestern University. And it was just an incredible experience. I simultaneously started Yakety Yak from there because I understood sort of intuitively how important it was to write for a target audience at this specific point in time when social media was really just taking off as a B2C network or mechanism. What I couldn't have predicted from there was how challenging. I just kept saying yes. And the best way I can like describe the next 10 years of my life was that I felt like I was like swimming, like diving through a wave, and then I would come up for air and then there'd be a bigger wave. And then I'd have to dive through it. And then I'd come up and like there'd be a bigger and bigger wave. And then I felt like I was just like in the middle of the ocean, so far away from shore that I didn't know how to get back. I didn't have a life raft. I didn't have people that I could ask for help or how I felt. And I felt really, really alone in entrepreneurship. I felt really alone in motherhood, and I felt like I was drowning. What I realized is that in all of building this business, all of becoming a mother, all of becoming a wife, I made thousands of micro compromises that set me apart from what I actually wanted. So let me explain what I mean by that. As women, we are taught to believe that if we do these things in life, we check these boxes, that we're going to be happy. And those things look like getting the job, me starting a business, finding the husband, did that, having the kids, did that, and achieving a certain quality of lifestyles, being able to buy certain things. Ultimately, what I found was that I was following someone else's script for what it meant to be a good wife. I am a very outspoken Sagittarius individual and not just outspoken, not like in a mean way. I'm not like brash or careless, but outgoing and able to use my voice. And I really just put myself in the back seat for communicating my needs, communicating my boundaries, communicating how to show up as a team in our marriage. I didn't do those things, at least not well, and not in a way that they were received. When it came to building my business, the roadmap that I had was about achieving and performance and asking a lot of people and continuing to push them to excel and taking on more work and always worrying about the bottom line. And those things were true and they are true in capitalism, but it also didn't make me feel good. It made me feel really burnt out. And I did a lot of that all by myself without having like a co-founder, without having an executive leadership team. And I didn't really know how to untangle myself from the reins that I was holding so tightly as a business owner. And then as a mother, my kids changed me in all of the best ways. But in reflecting on those times, I wish that I could do those early days of motherhood over again with the confidence that I have and the connection to my body that I have now. I remember after my daughter was born in 2016, she was a traumatic birth, shoulder dystocia, which basically meant that she got stuck. And it was the whole thing, lots of things that happened from that. But the commentary around to breastfeed, to not, to hold your baby, to not, what everyone was saying about like all of these should statements. I remember my nervous system felt completely shot, but I didn't know how to articulate it. I was so anxious and so wound up. I didn't know how to ask for what I needed. It wasn't due to postpartum. It was due to the fact that all of the commentary I was receiving had nothing to do with me trusting my instincts and everything to do with promoting commercialism, capitalism, and just like, ugh. It just felt so unnatural to me. By the time I had my third, I really figured it out and I felt much more connected and calm and knew that like I didn't give a fuck if I brought my boob out in public to feed my baby, and also was a different experience because it was a pandemic baby, which you guys will hear about. The systems of motherhood felt so unsupportive and disconnected to like what it means to have a calm nervous system, and going back to work and hauling around the breast pump and everything being about production. And like in this cycle, it just like none of it felt nurturing, and I knew it, but I didn't know how to articulate it. And so over the years, ultimately, I mentioned that like I kind of woke up and was like, I don't know who I am. I set down this path to reclaim my identity and to become my own mirror. And ultimately, that can translate to take agency over my life, to realize that I was actually in charge, to make sure that what was inside was reflecting on the outside, that I could be fully embodied in who I am, what I stand for, how I want to dress, how I want to show up, how I want to articulate myself. What are my values? How am I spending my time? So I started this journey, and gosh, it's been such a beautiful thing. I just like was going through my bookshelf and looking at all of the different books that I have read to help support me in this path, and all of the different voices that have helped me to reclaim my own voice, and how meaningful that has been. So ultimately what I learned through the path of like reclamation was like first like creating spaciousness for myself and my own thoughts, then through meditation and yoga and connection to nature, just being able to hear myself think, to be able to tune into what my body wants, my body needs. Because let me tell you guys, if you aren't connected to your body knows long before your brain and your head can articulate your needs and your wants. So I created space to listen. And some of the methodologies that I was exposed to include breathwork, sound healing, meditation, connection to nature, gateless writing, which is a form of like somatic journaling that I can't wait to tell you more about, and other healing modalities that allowed me to kind of quiet the noise and address some of the trauma that I had been carrying. And so here's what's like really fucked up about the whole process for me is that through this time of like listening, I created safety to address some of the things that I had been putting off for years, from sexual assault, rape, violence, harassment, traumatic birth, things that I was carrying in my body, but I had never created the spaciousness to deal with or process. And so as I sat down on this healing path, all of these things were coming up for me. And I was like finally able to reclaim my sense of self and get very clear about how I wanted to show up in the world, how I wanted to or didn't want to lead my business anymore, and what I wanted to create for myself. And one of the things that was so amazing for me as someone who had grown up as a musician, singing constantly and using healing touch on people like slumber parties and things like that, I reconnected with my ancestral healing energy and being able to be a conduit for healing for others. And my practices are rooted in somatic therapies. And I have spent the last 5 years of my life just deeply entrenched in learning, teaching, growing, listening, walking the walk for my own self, and then helping to walk side by side other women who are looking for information to do the same. Because when you wake up and you feel like you are in someone else's life, playing by someone else's rules, it can be a really, really lonely feeling. And I did end up making major changes in my life. We weren't able to save our marriage with the level of disconnect and rupture that we'd experienced. And so I am now a single mother of three with an active co-parent. And I did exit my business in the fall, like I shared. And now I am working in a full-time capacity to help support women and people who are in positions of leadership to reclaim what's true for them. And I do that through workshops, one-on-one coaching, retreats, and curated experiences in a corporate environment. But ultimately, what I do is I channel these programs and come up with ways to help reach people and make them feel seen and embodied and to remember who they are, ultimately to be a mirror, the mirror that I didn't have. And I feel like in this time, in this day, in this age, that women have never been safer to be exactly who they are. We just have to remember it and claim it. And so if I can help even one person on that path, then I am doing something right. So, about the show. What do we do here? Here, I will have many solo episodes where I'm sharing my experiences navigating some of the truths and hiccups and healing and the different modalities that are important to me and what I've learned along the way in case that can be useful for you. I also have guests so they can share their stories with you, people who have impacted my life, who have touched my heart, people who have made an impact on me, who I've learned from. And I am such a curious person. I think that learning is is just so important. So I always have my eyes open, my ears open. I'm always paying attention and believe that you can truly take away something from everyone. And so I'll be bringing people on the show so you can gain their perspective as well. And I just am so grateful for you being here. Now, one thing that's really important is that because we are starting brand new as Inner Alchemy, I would love for you to leave a review, to leave a comment so that we can get pumped up there in the algorithm and so that we can get some traction because I believe very strongly that the more we can help women remember who they are and remember their power, the faster we can shift the trajectory of this planet. We need feminine energy. We need strong women who are connected to their heads and their hearts from their body, mind, and spirit. And if I can be that conduit for helping people remember who they are, then, like I said, I've done my job. But we need people to find it. So please share, comment, do all of those things that you know to do because they actually really do matter. And I am just so glad that you're here. I want to hear from you. So with that in mind, thank you so much for being here. We've got lots more to share. We've got lots of announcements about other opportunities to work together live in the flesh, virtual opportunities, and retreats coming up. So make sure that you're following along. You can subscribe to my newsletter, which is available at ashleydlogan.com. And in the meantime, I'm just so grateful for you. Welcome home.